We're live. Yes, I'm very, very excited to say for the first time, welcome to the very first episode of the Club Fantasy Show. My name is Charlie, but you might know me by my producer and DJ alias Orwell, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, in her own words, the Bristol's favourite support act. Introduce yourself.
So my name's Bria. I'm a producer, DJ. That's my real name. That's my DJ name.
Say no
Nothing
more.
special. Yeah, that's it. That's me.
To introduce, basically, Club Fantasy is a new label project I'm starting. But the music stuff I'm going to talk about a little bit later because really I wanted to launch the brand with the podcast, really, just to get the values of the brand, as the sort of first thing that everyone has contact with, and really like start building this like community off of the back of, the community that we have with things like Kafka and the Bristol scene in general. And sort of, I guess the aim really is to kind of solidify a bit more what the political and sort of social aims are behind what we do, what people in our scene do, and talk to those people and have these conversations so that we can sort of solidify it a bit more and get better at when things go wrong. And it's a very crazy political time at the moment, so navigating that with each other in in the best way that we can is going to take some conversation. So that's what we want to do. But I thought, I know you've been waiting for me to ask you this question, but do you want to tell us why you're here and why you think this is important as well?
Well, ultimately, I feel like you could answer your own question just because you invited me on the show. So why did you want me here?
I mean, we talk a lot about your experiences. As soon as I moved to Bristol, you were like one of the first people that I like met up with, and I was coming to your shows within like a week of moving in, and it was like a crash course in seeing promoters do things badly and treat you in a way that I thought was, well, you were telling me, it wasn't just me that thought it, although it was very noticeable. Just watching your experiences in the scene and like coming from a completely different scene, which died down a few years ago in High Wycombe. It was saddening really to see that, and we were sort of always talking about things, and I thought it was only right to first of all to get you to actually like voice that publicly, and not to call people out, but to tell people what you've been through as a DJ, and like
To make people like more aware of what's going on and how things work in the scene, like in reality. And I also want to add to that and say, because I'm not just a DJ, I'm not just a producer, I'm also a student, and I've been studying politics at university for 4 years. So I feel like it's put me in like quite a well-equipped situation to talk about these things and frame them in sort of like a political sense, which is quite a nice way to bring together two things that I love very much, which is music and politics.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like, I mean, we spoke years ago before we actually met each other properly. Just about, I think I was writing an essay or something like that, and I feel like we shared some values. I think we were both realised that we were quite left wing, I guess.
Yeah.
And like, so that coming together, I feel like it only makes sense to do something that I don't see a lot. You see little pieces of journalism here and there that will go into circulation for like 2 days, everyone's talking about it, and then suddenly everyone's forgotten again. So let's keep this rolling, basically. Monthly shows, keep talking about it, keep getting people on. Obviously, not got anyone on today, but we need to like work out the format.
Yeah.
And
But also a really important thing is not just talking about these issues, because we've heard people talk about them, like we said, little bits of journalism, but also just like in our community, people like are very much discussing these sorts of ideas, these issues, but we want to change the conversation and not only talk about, okay, cool, this is bad, this is wrong, we don't like it, this isn't what we want our industry to look like, but we want to start talking about solutions. We want to start talking about what does our perfect industry look like and how can we then get there? What are the problems and how can we then solve them? We want to like broaden the horizon of the conversation to address solutions as well as problems.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's like what I was saying with the like sort of 2 day cycle, and people are discussing it, but because we're not organized and we're not, there's not enough of a, like I was saying at the beginning, like there's not enough of like a concrete, this is what we do when things go wrong, this is what we do when we're in deep economic crises like now, and like the closer we get to that, the better things will be for our scene. And I think, so to kick off like the kind of topic that we want to talk about today, which is gentrification, I was going to sort of talk about the way I see a lot of people talking about social issues. A lot of the time they'll simplify it quite a lot. So what I tend to get is this sort of like vague libertarianism within like different subcultures. So things like countercultural stuff like underground music, for example, which is obviously like what we're going to focus on. There's this kind of very, very dumbed down, it's us against them,
But who is them?
Yeah.
And what are they doing?
And who's us as well?
Yeah.
Like, because the idea, I'd love it to be as simple as there's a 99% and then there's the 1% and the 99%. There's no problems. There's no, inequalities there. It's just just the billionaires and then us. It's like it's not like that. And instead of simplifying it, we do need to like drill down and look at the different class interests within something that what we do within electronic music. And the closer we drill down into that, the less confused we get when issues come about. I don't know if you had anything to add on that before we jump in.
Yeah, I think as well, we're absolutely not like wanting to say that anyone's sort of doing anything wrong when they're sort of dealing with any issues that come up. The whole point is to like open the conversation of how we deal with things, because I've done it myself where I've been treated badly. I've just not known how to deal with the situation, and it's ended up with me doing nothing and sort of allowing it to happen. And that's then how it continues. That's how it becomes like a cycle of it happens again and again to me, to other artists, to other people in the scene. So yeah, it's just about let's start something now.
Yeah. And I think it's good to like that you're coming on and you'll be able to drop some of it, because I've had bad experiences, but I'm alright, dude. I don't get half of them,
Yeah,
so,
I'm excited to like talk about some of my experiences and get them out to a bit more of like a wider audience and talk to different people about it. And I'm hoping that obviously after this, if there's things that I said that you want to chat to me about, please do. Like message me on Instagram if you catch me out somewhere. Like I'm so happy to talk about these things all the time. So
yeah. Also, please leave a comment on like the Mixcloud. If you've got something that you want to add to the show, we might be able to go through it at the end. I just keep hitting the fucking thing.
Have we got the burner running as well? Somewhere. Yeah.
Links up. I'll put a message on.
Yeah. So if you want to message the burner as well.
Let us know your thoughts, because we don't like, the whole point is we don't want this to just be
us two talking.
Yeah, we're not the authority on this, but we do want to start the conversation.
And we're really open to people disagreeing with us. We're open to disagreeing with each other, and also very open to like, you can say one thing, have it explained in a different way, or have another perspective come in, and you can change your mind. Like this is what these conversations are about. They're dynamic and fluid. So
yeah. Right, so let's kick off the first topic.
Get started.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like you should introduce it, because I feel like you know the people behind this documentary, right?
Yeah, so the main person who made this documentary, it's called Closing Announcement, and it's about Bristol venue culture, and it was made by Iwan Lewis, who runs Stellar Audio, which is drum and bass, but also they're moving into like more other genres. It's very dark, experimental music.
As everyone is.
Yeah. That in itself being a political statement. Like, the kind of music that we make is dark, it's scary. I think there's a reason why. But for now, it's Closing Announcement. If you haven't watched it, definitely do, because also in the show we're going to be referencing it quite a lot, so it'd be quite nice to sort of see the whole thing. Also, it's just incredibly well made.
It's beautifully shot.
Yeah,
it's beautifully
well
shot.
done, Iwan. Big ups to you. But yeah, to get started, the whole thing is about Bristol venue culture, but there's a specific section, sort of near the beginning, that focuses in on gentrification. So that's basically what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. Do you have anything like straight off the bat that you want to say?
Not
No.
You,
I mean, I've got a lot to say.
yeah, I've got a lot to say, but I don't know where to start. So if you want to start it off, then
Yeah, okay. I'd say like the main thing I take from that documentary is what I was saying about class interest, basically. So, in terms of we're all a scene together, clubs going under, it breaks my heart. Do you know what I mean?
it's so sad.
Yeah. I mean, I was at a club last night. I was at a club on Friday. I was at a club on Tuesday. You know, and I love all three of those venues. You know,
Yeah.
if I was to see those closed down, it would be
You think about all your memories that you had there with different
100%.
people. If you
Yeah.
played a set there,
Yeah.
if you like met some friends there, just had even just like little nice interactions with people that you've never even seen again.
Yeah.
You know, it's just places. It's a beautiful place where people come together.
Yeah, and it's jobs, you know.
And
It's jobs. It's our ability to make money as a DJ, as a promoter.
As a VJ, as a like
Yeah.
doing the lights
On the bar.
security.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's a whole microeconomy, you know. And to see that
It's
to see
an
that go down.
ecosystem.
Exactly. And to see that go down would be, you know, a terrible shame.
And I know that, like, I watched Blue Mountain go under a couple of years ago. And
Yeah.
I remember I made some of my first, like, big night out memories at Blue Mountain. And it was around for so long. So it's stuff like that. It's really, really sad to see it go.
And so, like, we're all connected to this thing that's happening, but in so many different ways. And I think the way that you drill down into that and you find out why there's different reactions to things and why, like, it's not as harmonious as you think. There's it's sort of similar interests being, like, affected in the same way is this thing of class interest, basically. You know, you've got the venue owner, for example, you know, if it's their property. You've got promoters, DJs. They all have a different relation to the money involved in this.
In this ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. And so obviously some are making more than others, and you know that comes with different sort of like inequalities regarding like class as well. And so what I notice is in this documentary they're talking about gentrification, but they're sort of talking about that end stage gentrification, which is like it's sort of affecting the venue owners and the people that run these venues, right?
Yeah.
So they're saying it's when these venues are getting turned into flats.
Yeah.
But the process started
A long time.
a long time ago, and so I look at it and I think possibly the best sort of example of demographic change and like who it affects and who, you know, when people start caring about it is so. You know, even if you're a venue owner and you're saddened by the fact that somewhere like Stokes Croft is completely changing demographic-wise, you know, it's becoming full of white middle-class students because that tends to be the, like, you know, the student demographic, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the ones who've got money to spend because, you know, student loan, all of that. And
as well, we got like international students as well who
Yeah.
are paying more money to like go to university, which sort of implies that they might have more money to spend in the city as well.
And also that's just always been a thing of, you know, universities, well, not always been a thing actually, but it's a thing.
But in recent times, obviously, universities just costing a lot of money.
Yeah,
So.
and it's sort of seen as a more middle class thing to do, I guess, to go to university and sort of leave your like countryside town or whatever, as I did.
Same.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, so essentially, like a venue owner is obviously looking at this changing demographic. They might think it's a real shame, but all these kids running around with money to spend. It's keeping their business afloat. Do you know what I mean? So like the gentrification that's pushing, you know, minority communities out of this town, that part, they're not going to speak on it just yet. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sure they would because they can, but until it like really affects the
Their
business,
own
that's
livelihood. Yeah.
closing announcement is about that.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about the stage before. I know there's been journalism about it before, but it's like as an electronic music scene, we need to focus in on like that earlier stage and sort of
on just like the displacement of the community that sort of lived there before all of this started happening. I'm trying to think. I feel like there are a few bits that I sort of want to reference. Sorry, I'm just having a bit of
well, there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah. So as well, I wanted to talk about students and like because also that's one thing that's sort of mentioned in the documentary. But ultimately students aren't necessarily a like homogenous demographic because there's so many different like nuances and so many different types of students. Like I said, like one of the big sort of separations is like home students and international students, or like you could talk about students who go to private school or students who came from state school, stuff like that. So you can break it down into different sort of like groups of people, because ultimately when you look at like political trends, communities like tend to stay in their little bubbles and stay in their little groups. So like middle class people hang out with middle class people, low class people. It's even seen in stuff like trends of marriage. People tend to marry into their class and stuff like that. But what I'm saying with that is, can we really see students as like because a lot of the documentary and a lot of like journalism talks about students and gentrification and whatever. But can we really say that it's like just students? I don't.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. I mean, that's why when I brought up this example basically of, you know, venue owners thinking, you know, benefiting from the you know, influx of students or whatever. That's not like, there's no moralistic thing there that I'm trying to say of like, you know, you're benefiting from this, and you know, essentially it's always been like, I remember talking to you about this actually, that the university is like, has been around for
so
like
the university,
a century or something,
right? Mate, so the university has been here since the 1500s. It then
a bit more than a century.
yeah, and then it became University College Bristol in the 19th century. But then realistically, so like that kind of demonstrates how the city was built on the university rather than the students who like came in and sort of changed the scene, because they've always been there. But I feel like the most important dates aren't when the university was created, but there were sort of two big like influxes of participation in higher education, and that happened one in the 1960s and one in the 1980s. So I feel like in those kind of eras, those are the kind of time periods that we need to look at and see how sort of gentrification started to maybe begin potentially in one of those sort of pockets of time where you had like a massive influx of new students like being able to participate in higher education, because preceding the 60s or the 80s, it wasn't that normal.
It was very closed off.
It was very, very closed off.
Yeah. No, I think you're making like a really sort of strong point as well, because I feel like I would feel it would be very unfair to lump you into the category of like student DJ.
Yeah.
Despite the fact
I am very much a student DJ.
Yeah, you're in your final year.
Yeah.
And you're DJing as well.
Yeah.
But I probably only feel that in the same way that someone who's someone else who I don't know, whose mate is a student DJ, is probably saying the same thing about them. You know, it's just like, I think essentially the label just probably feels like
it's one of those kind of, how you were talking about earlier, just like sort of like vague terminology that actually ultimately doesn't really describe what like what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's like, for example, like I'm not just a student DJ, but I'm a woman of colour, like in the scene, and like I'm a child of immigrants, and so that all of these sort of like aspects of my identity feed into my experience of being a student DJ in Bristol.
Yeah.
It's not like me and every student of a DJ, like student DJ, have the same experiences.
Yeah.
It's just like classic intersectionality.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the point you're trying to make about like it, you know, the gentrification process isn't just because students are in the area and like you know, that's raising rent because they're more affluent and stuff like that. It, once again, from saying in closing announcement that actually the process started earlier, that's not where it started. It's even earlier than that, you know. Like, I mean, we had a good movement going a few years ago. I think it was 2021, really, like sort of a year after like lockdowns had sort of become like this thing that was happening. You know, we had that movement of, you know, people started talking about the sort of decommodification of education, right? And that's when I started to learn what like my role in the whole process of gentrification was as a student, because
absolutely,
you know, it's always been a rite of passage for, I don't know, for my family. I mean, my dad got like like a grant to go to uni to study. My mum studied, my sister went to university, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you grow up and that's kind of, it's like doing your GCSEs, you do your A levels, then you go to university. It's not the same for every family, of
Yeah,
course.
like
but
I was going to say, for me, I'm the first generation of my family going to university. So my dad and my mum both didn't. I know my mum left school pretty young, and so did my dad, because they had to work and just like earn some money so they could support their families. This was before they moved to the UK back in India, and then they moved to the UK. And yeah, they were both just working from a pretty young age. So I think it was my cousin, who's obviously same generation as me, who was the first person to go to university in our family.
Yeah. And so you ending up at uni, right?
Mhm.
What you can like interrogate like what made you want to do that, and it's, you know, it's probably the same thing that I'm talking about as well, of like it's kind of just this thing that you're, you know, if you want to be a high achiever, you go to uni. Obviously completely untrue to say, you know,
Yeah.
like I know so many people that didn't go to uni and they're probably earning more money than me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was having a conversation with my mum on the phone the other day. She was like, what's your plans for after uni? I was like, I'm going to keep working at my cafe.
Exactly. Like how many graduates like are really getting like high paid jobs? So yeah, this thing that's like, you know, creating this need to go to, or well, this sort of inbuilt,
It's this trend.
Yeah.
Trend.
That is used by the unis obviously to just generate, you know, huge profits. I mean, I went to UAL in London, and you know, my vice chancellor was, I think, earning something like 200k a year. You know, it's like, and has like nothing to do with like art. You know, an art uni. I think you know, it's quite, and you know, we had all these problems. You know, I was campaigning quite a lot for like the in-housing of cleaners at the time, and you're sort of, you know, you're trying to fight through a sort of brick wall of like, what's the word?
Wait, what are you trying to
Bureaucracy
say?
of like a uni's like
Yeah.
management or whatever. And
yeah, that's it.
effectively, it's the same problem that I was talking about with how badly, well, not how bad, yeah, how badly we're organised as a, you know, as people on the left a lot of the time, in fighting things, you know, fighting inequalities and stuff like that. We just seem to be really poorly set up to fight things.
But also, like, to point out that that's how the system is sort of designed to keep us down. Like it's not meant to be easy for us to fight back against these sort of forces, because like they're designed to like.
But we need to step up,
we
basically.
need to step up. Yeah,
basically.
Obviously. That's why we're here.
And so I feel like I just sort of said a bunch of words that like don't really feel that related just then. But like, in terms of what I'm saying, like,
to tie it back in.
Yeah, the commodification of university is like a huge factor.
Yeah.
In what we're talking about in Bristol Music, you know, how many students who've chosen their like choices, and they like electronic music, they're gonna come Bristol.
Yeah, I was gonna say a big reason that I came to Bristol was because I like electronic music, and I was excited to be in a city that had an incredible scene. Like, that was quite high up, because I didn't want to go, and I feel like people who also go to university will relate to me on this. It's like, you don't want to go to a university where there's like not really much nightlife or not much to do. It's not as appealing, you know. And Bristol's like a creative hub. It's insane. So.
I mean, you could say it the same about a lot of major cities, and
definitely
just like that, the same problem is happening in all major cities. And I think one thing out of Closing Announcement, the documentary, that is both really sad to hear from my point of view, but also it was just a theme that came up, and it's sort of related to what we're talking about. You know, this happening in loads of major cities, is they was, you know, almost all of the people interviewed said or implied that gentrification is it has to happen.
Yeah, it was like an unstoppable force.
Yeah.
This is great, because this is what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah. We got there in the end.
Yeah.
Dicking about for a bit.
So yeah, there was this sort of running theme that gentrification is this unstoppable force, and that we can't do anything about it. Or like, there was a few people that mentioned that like it's fine as long as the community like participate in it, or like the community
Doesn't make
like,
any sense.
Yeah,
Doesn't make
like,
any sense.
ultimately, the definition of gentrification is that like you have like stuff like rent prices going up and food prices going up and expensive like restaurants and cafes and stuff, and people are then as a result driven out. So like that's the process, that's gentrification.
Yeah.
So there is no way it would be like
it's an oxymoron. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And also, like, I just want to talk about, is gentrification unstoppable? Is it? What do you think?
I would say, like, basically.
Sorry, big question.
No. It's like I was gonna try and answer that question in my own way, I guess. So, I'd say you can't have a concentration of, like, capital, and it not sort of create.
Yeah,
like,
I was going to say, in a capitalist, neoliberal, free market economy, it's like
all
a
of
force to be reckoned with.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I guess, like, I mean, it's completely left my head now, but yeah, what I wanted to talk about was, like, it is unstoppable in the system that we live in because, like, right, so for example, I think these different definitions, and it's going back to this class interest thing and these, you know, like, different nodes in the electronic scene, for example, as, you know, as the basis of what we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Like, their definitions of gentrification kind of tell you how it's baked into everything that capitalism is. So,
Okay, cool.
like, a lot of people will look at it, well, for example, this, you know, like, venue owners being like, oh, gentrification is when the like, new build flats that are unaffordable get put into an area. But to some people, gentrification is more like, you know, hipster cafe sort of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Like, I can't go out for a coffee with my mates anymore, just like round, like, by my house.
Yeah.
That's
So,
gentrification.
and I think both those people are completely right, but they're sort of, they want to say one part of it and it kind of ignore the rest of it sometimes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think, like, there's sort of, I think there's also this kind of idea as well that artsy people move to a low rent price area and make it sort of cool, or, you know, whatever you think cool is.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
There's probably
If
different
they just bring
types.
the art, they bring, and that essentially makes it.
Yeah. And a lot of people look at that and say that that's a great thing. You know, it's, you know, suddenly it's more colourful and I don't know.
There's more of a buzz.
Yeah, and there's a cool venue and it's stuff like
Yeah.
that, and it's like, and rent prices are going up because of this cool thing.
Yeah, this energy that's like new in the city or the area.
Yeah, but I would ask you, like, when you're looking for a flat for, you know, any reason, whether it's like going to uni or, I mean, this isn't for everyone, I guess, but, like, yeah, when you're looking to rent a property, I definitely don't go from, like, when I do the filter, I don't do price highest to lowest.
I do lowest to highest.
Exactly. You know, you're always going to go for the more affordable option, you know, within within your own personal preference or whatever.
Yeah.
And your own like, class interest as well. And I think that's what's kind of this thing where we're sort of atomized when we talk about gentrification, because, so if, you know, minority working class communities don't own properties, right, and that, you know, you've got landlords owning entire areas of somewhere like St. Paul's, for example, and a landlord, like, you know, so a property becomes available, right, and someone's looking for somewhere to live, and they go for a cheap option. They move in. They happen to be someone who's, I don't know, a creative or something like that. They don't have to be Fred again, you know, like from the peerage or whatever, like parents in blue writing on Wikipedia kind of thing. Like, they can be, you know, maybe a little bit more wealthy than the people that originally lived there or whatever, or just not, you know, like, not a migrant worker or something like that. You know, that if they're just a different race or a different, like, sexuality or whatever, you know, the demographic might start to change or whatever, and that's not immediately a bad thing. and then these things kind of keep happening because it's baked into the system, basically.
Wait, I didn't completely follow. So could you try and explain that again, but like condense it a bit?
So yeah, I'm basically sort of just So like, anyone that moves into that flat that's not like
super
the original,
expensive. Or
you know, like a normal property, right?
Yeah,
you know, not a new build. Like, I don't know, for somewhere like Bristol, maybe you're looking at like 400 to 500 a month or something like that, as like a, you know, like somewhere like relatively affordable to rent or whatever. Like as soon as that starts happening, if it happens again and again and again, that's when this thing starts happening, and you, over time, obviously the process develops into like the monster that we know as like gentrification. And for that reason, I would say, if there's, you know, if people can exploit private property, it will always be a thing. And I actually remember, and I wanted you to talk about it because you spoke before to me about Chinatown.
I was literally just about to get onto that.
There we
go. Okay, so
we got there in the end again.
The whole podcast is just waiting for you to know what I want to talk about, so I can take over.
Say things until we remember like our points of view.
So basically, I have looked at a case study of Chinatown because this is a Chinatown that is in New York. And I did it because I wanted to look at what alternatives do we have? Like, how can we defeat gentrification? Okay, cool. We've talked about it. We've explained what it is. We know that it's this process, and people don't seem to like it. So, okay, what do we do? And it was really, really interesting to see that in New York, in Chinatown in New York, they've put in place quite a few different measures to sort of stop gentrification or slow it down, or, do you know what I mean, deal with it. So one of the first things is community ownership of the land. So they've developed community land trusts so that non-profit community organisations own the land and they lease it to low-income homeowners. And the primary concern of this, the purpose of it, is to house their community members on the cheap, ensuring that prices stay down, and they have sort of no incentive to like extract profit from it because it's community owned. Like they just won't do that. Because they want to keep Chinatown as a safe haven for low income Chinese immigrants who move there. And I think it's worked pretty well. There's also a couple of other bits that they've done. So they have rent control, which is like capping the profits that landlords can extract from tenants. They've sort of tried to even the playing field between tenants and landlords as well by having strong legal protections from eviction and from rent gouging to stop rapid gentrification. And they've also democratized urban planning. So it's very, very common for property to be sold cheaply to large developers or banks, like in a normal, like gentrified sort of area. But in Chinatown, they give community members first priority to invest into their own neighbourhoods. And this kind of means that planning decisions allow the community members to protect like their own area. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. There are things that we can do.
Yeah, I mean, you've basically just you've described like an excellent socialist policy, really. I mean, it makes me think. I mean, you know, one of the things you brought up that we should do with the show is like imagine what our perfect scene looks like.
Yeah, that's my big question.
Yeah, and it's like it looks like something where there's not a barrier to entry that just always involves money, and there's a way we can do that, and that's social ownership, you know.
Yeah, and I also really like the idea of like social ownership and that kind of community driven like policy, because I think if you're doing that in stuff like the economic realm, it will like sort of echo into the social realm, into the political realm. Like it's the like those economic values will shape everything else. I'm pretty sure that's even, I can't believe, like I think Margaret Thatcher said something about that, like about economic policy being, do you know what I'm talking about?
What, like affecting social values and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I mean, she
Because she should massively like radically change like economic policy, like implemented neoliberalism. Like,
yeah, I mean,
crazily
her and Ronald Reagan are like the
neoliberal
I
like
mean,
icons. Well, I
yeah.
say icons. They're not my icons.
I
I
mean,
just
we
mean
have
they're
we have we have that policy to thank, really, like her, the neoliberal sort of ideology to thank for basically every reason that we can't organize well.
yeah,
um, it's this thing of being atomized, and I think about, like, say, I mean, Kafka is a wonderful community already, right? But like, yeah, let's go. um, but imagine the ability to socially own, like, space
yeah,
as part of that community, build what this group of people want. And it's,
yeah.
it's a far reaching group of people as well.
And it's like, even to like simplify it into what I was saying earlier, and to like make it a bit more sort of something that you can see. It's like, say you have a community owned space for like people who do electronic music, like a shared space where you have studios, you have like DJ like decks, you have an area to chill out. Like, not only is that a space that you can go and use for free to like develop your craft, your creative endeavor, but also like, when you physically think about this like hypothetical space, it means you can all chat to each other, you make friends, you have these like social bonds being created. And that's what I mean, how these economic policies where you have like ownership of the land, where the land is then shared between all the people, that's exactly how it like emanates into sort of social policy.
It starts to just become,
this overriding
it starts to be what we base our life off, and I think
it informs our like all our behaviors and our interactions.
Exactly. I mean, like, one other thing I wanted to sort of bring up with this, right, is, those horrible moments, and a few have happened recently, right,
Yeah.
where a bunch of people from the scene and this scene, like, are gonna play for someone, a promoter, right?
Yeah.
And
who emanate sort of the wrong values.
yeah. To put it simply, right, they might pick up a misdemeanor here or there, right, that everyone wants to disassociate with, right?
Absolutely.
But then that event completely disappears, and that, I think that's an example of, like, sole ownership being a problem with this. Like, right, so why, as DJs, do you have to just be like employed by like one body, right, that's like paying you directly, and you have no say in how the events run?
And no say in like how decisions are made, and
Yeah.
like, there's no or even form of like removing that person who
Precisely.
is the sole owner.
That's exactly what I'm going for.
That's how it functions, because it's a business. It's a business.
Yeah, it's
capitalist business.
Yeah, and I think, and that's coming back again to this idea of it's class interest. We can't simply say, like, things are really tough for the scene now, we're all going through it. It's like, well, we are not taking that away. The objective situation is what it is.
Because especially like, that's why we're here talking about these things as well, because we understand that like the scene is going through it.
Yeah, but there are different class interests within this scene, and to be fair, I tried to do a diagram once of like Marx's labor theory of value, but like like the like network of like DJ, like, and it doesn't actually make sense. Like, I didn't.
It's such a complicated web of relationships.
Because I'm looking at it like a producer is like making music, like sending it to a DJ, and then the DJ, like, but they're not really getting paid for that.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like, I don't know, like, and then the DJ is like playing for the promoter, and the promoter is paying.
And then also
the venue.
And the DJ could be doing it for free, if like, and they could be getting paid. Like, there's like nuances which are going to be like unique to every different situation. So it just gets super complicated.
I also went down the route as well of being like, and the producer's using MacBook, and the MacBook was made in China and like
oh my god.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it just got too much. I was just like, I'm actually just about to draw like a diagram of like the entire like tech
World.
ecosystem or whatever. So yeah, I'll finish that. I'll bring it in one day. Maybe next month. I'll
Yeah,
have like
maybe next year.
yeah, yeah. But no, I think that's essentially the sort of message, and like once again, it's not a moralistic thing.
Mhm.
It's not a the class interest of this node within the scene is this, therefore bad
Yeah.
type of person.
Yeah.
It's not moralistic at all. It's an economic like relation to everyone else,
Mhm.
and it doesn't have to be. In fact, I actually think we're gonna gain more people solidaristically. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's not a word. I think I tried to type that in the other day, and I was like solidaristic, and I looked it up. I was like, oh, this isn't a word,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna use it.
You're gonna pretend it's
Yeah.
word.
We're gonna coin words on
yeah.
the show now. Yeah, no, we can gain more people through this process of drilling down into the economic relations. Then we're gonna lose because obviously, you know, when we do that, we're gonna find out that some people are reactionary, right? And like
Yeah.
they don't want to see equal playing field. They don't
Okay.
want to see.
What do you mean by
inequality.
that? What do you mean that some people are reactionary? I just want to ask you questions to break it.
Yeah, no, that's all good.
What
So,
do you mean by that?
so say COVID times, right?
Okay, cool.
Our entire industry, like, brought to the ground, right?
Yeah.
Events, all sort of like,
Even just like in general, arts being defunded quite massively and not really
Yeah,
having a lot of help
yeah.
to recover. I know there was like that big sort of fund that was dished out, but it was actually really, really complicated to get access to.
Yeah, as it
the
always
was it
is.
the Arts Council fund?
Quite possibly,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I know they do stuff like generally anyway.
But there was like a special COVID one to help like
Yeah,
recovery.
arts
that's it.
recovery fund or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, no. So in times like that, you know, you know, there's these sort of small businesses, local businesses that do sort of, you know, they so back the community and the community backs them,
Mhm.
and you get these really wholesome moments where differing economic interests of, you know, maybe owning a shop or because you know, at the end of the day, if you own a shop in a local community, you're still, you know, the economic trade-off there is you are taking from the wages of like
Yeah.
of the people that are around you. But what I'm trying to say with this sort of, you can gain people solidaristically with like with realizing these like economic relationships you're having, and not in like a moralistic way where you're saying like, oh, you're this.
taking my money or
Yeah. I need to stop
Headbutting the
nodding. You need to stop
mic.
saying things right. I keep nodding. Yeah. So yeah, you can.
You can't just be like, oh, this person's taking my money, like this is bad.
It's
what
not.
you're
It's
trying
not
to say.
bad. It's just how
How
we're
the-
living.
Yeah, it's looking more objectively at how these economic relations work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sort of saying, is this what we want? Because at the end of the day, ultimately, it's like no one person's fault that this is a system that we live in. Like right now,
Exactly.
I can't blame someone who works in a shop for taking my money because I also need the food that they give me. But
Yeah,
maybe we should
yeah.
question about why should I be paying for food? Why should I be paying for stuff like water?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we start to slide towards the end goal, you know, which we don't have to name. Socialism. Yeah. But yeah, no. What I mean when I say we're gonna find some people who are reactionary, and we're gonna lose those people.
Yeah, cool.
In theory,
So what does that
because-
mean? Who are the people that are reactionary?
Right,
Does,
so
what does
this-
reactionary mean?
I guess.
I know it means like they react, but what are they reacting to?
I think the sort of political definition of reactionary is like, so you know the phrase like progressive.
Yeah.
It's like the opposite. It's like sort of like, do you know what? It's one of those ones where I've read the definition ages ago, and I was just sort of like,
Use it, and now you
yeah, I've
just,
just forgotten. Like, I know it's like, right wing. Should we just say
Okay,
that?
Yeah.
Should we just say like ideologically opposed to like community organising?
Okay, cool.
Or
yeah.
well, left wing community organising, because
Okay.
you can actually organise in a community as a fascist, I suppose.
It's just not
Yeah.
not the goal that I want really.
Yeah.
On the radio station.
No.
Yeah. So
Yeah, Tom and Lauren are actually like our dictators. We're actually forced to be here right now.
Yeah, we're actually chained.
Yeah.
To the seat.
There's actually scripts they're reading off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lauren just said we're actually reading off scripts.
Yeah, I keep looking there because the auto cue is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So, do you know what reactionary means now? Have I said it? Okay?
So there are people that are reactionary. So what do they do?
Oh, right. Yeah. So
do they
in
do?
situations like the lockdowns where you had really like beautiful
Yeah,
community
could you
organi-
explain it in the terms of COVID, and I might understand it. So who
Yeah.
would the reactionary
that
force
thing
be?
that we all went through.
Yeah.
So we all, the great leveler.
I know. I tried to like suppress it from my memory. It just won't go.
Yeah,
but
yeah. Okay.
who was the reactionary force in COVID?
Like businesses that are profiting. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, so like big.
Profiting, but like not, in like a non-ordinary way, like cynical profiting
Okay, yeah.
from that kind of situation,
Okay, cool.
or just like turning their. But I mean, it's there's big examples, right? Like just mass layoffs and stuff like that in periods of time. Yeah, people that just prioritize profit over
Okay, cool.
over people.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and we're going to lose those people when we start to organise on this basis, and we start to work out that yes, there are different class interests within what we do as electronic music people.
Yeah.
I'm Club Fantasy is going to be a label.
Yeah.
Free download out at 6 p.m. But that's free, so this part doesn't really come into it.
Yeah, but free. But is that exploiting the labour?
Of myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's my song, so it's fine. It's gonna be a label, so I'm gonna have a class interest that's I want to make money from you as a DJ. I want you to buy, actually not really, because you wouldn't really play Club Fantasy music. It's not hard or fast enough really.
Is it not?
Some of it will be when you do a release, but then that's kind of you're not gonna buy that.
No,
So
I
it's
just
all
I just
fallen
buy it a
down.
couple of times, so like it looks like it's getting traffic.
Yeah, Ria.
Yeah.
On Bandcamp, it's just your
I'll
face.
bring up my mum and get her to buy it.
We've all done it.
Have we?
What, like like leverage people to buy your music?
No, I thought you meant you buying your own music.
Oh, do you know what? I think I did. I think I did once.
Really?
You know that Tears in the Rain EP.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because it was like number 2 in the charts. so I bought it, and then obviously I celebrated it. Like, yeah, we got number 1 in the charts, but it's literally like I lost like £4. And I don't even think I made it back on the.
On buying it.
No,
Or like
I didn't make a penny out of that EP. Which we should probably revisit at some
Yeah,
point,
we
to be
will,
honest,
yeah.
in light of this show. Obviously, something like a label is gonna involve a class interest that is at odds with a DJ, a consumer, a working person. As much as I'm providing a service, and that's what they want to buy in theory. Let's fucking hope so.
That's what we want.
Yeah. But yeah, there you go. I'm showing that class interest, as we say. Like as we're talking, I'm saying like I hope these people buy this music, instead of just having a hourly wage or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So.
Should we go back to the thing when we were talking about COVID?
Yeah.
Did we finish that point?
I mean, I
Yeah,
suppose it was an
I say you.
example to get to the idea of like reactionaries. But yeah,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
did you want to say?
Nothing really. I was just seeing if we finished the point or not.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, can continue.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to maybe go back and try and find like a much better example of like a smaller scale thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe something related to electronic music. I mean, I know there was like layoffs from venues and stuff like that, but there was also so many venues that. I mean, there's venues now. I know Peckham Audio. This is a really interesting example, right? So, I think there's like quite a rich, not property developer, but like I don't know, sort of just one of those landlords that's kind of like tries to be kind of like socially aware. And
Oh, you did it again.
I did it again. I've done it about 14 times. I've been counting.
Okay.
Yeah, no, and they're sort of buying this venue on Peckham Rye,
Okay.
on Rye Lane, I should say, called Peckham Audio, and I've heard that they're sort of going to be running like food banks during the day and stuff like that. And it's like you look at sort of like reformist examples like that.
So like socially conscious, like development and use of land and property.
Obviously, that's excellent, but
Okay.
you know, it's like what you were saying a minute ago when you said we start questioning why we're paying for food and water. It's like there's always been philanthropy, right? Like there's always been like rich people who are just exploiting, and then there's
that like there's like the idea of paternalism essentially, and like the idea that like people who have more money, who have more wealth, have the responsibility to look after people with those like with less wealth. But realistically, ultimately, shouldn't that looking after people with less wealth being like the sort of enabling of social mobility and stuff like that? We shouldn't have to have it that the rich have to look after the poor. Also, I don't really think that's the case. I don't think that actually happens. I don't think that I really don't think the rich look after the poor, but say they did, shouldn't really looking after them being like the enabling of like social mobility, allowing those people who don't have much being able, like having the ability to rise up.
But, I mean, essentially.
But also, that's also still within like a very like capitalist framework. That's me giving an example within the like situation that we already live in. It's not me even considering any sort of like radical ideas or like any alternative like
economic system.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I mean, this is what I'm trying to say. Like,
but the thing is also, I do want to address that sometimes it's really, really difficult to see outside of capitalism. So it was Mark Fisher who wrote Capitalist Realism.
Yeah.
And I reference this quite a lot because I just think it's really, really interesting. There's a lot of different principles of it, but essentially one of the like foundational ideas of Capitalist Realism is that it's easier to see the end of the world than the end of capitalism.
Yeah.
So that just demonstrates how we literally cannot see beyond the system that we live in because it's just so ingrained into our brains and into how we see the world that like you couldn't imagine like a different economic system being like created and like working and like, being good and like being happy in it. Like it's literally like I experience it. Like sometimes I can't imagine what the world would look like if we didn't live in capitalism.
Yeah.
But like also, I can't blame myself because it's the only thing I've lived in.
No, absolutely. I mean, what I think is, I do like Mark Fisher. I do like that book as well. I do think it's really interesting. I think people also take it in a really cynical way. Yeah. Actually, I think it is actually a call to arms, really.
Yeah, definitely.
For left wingers, but it's sort of seen as this kind of doomy sort of
dystopia.
Which obviously
it kind of is, but I feel like that's its function as like a call to arms to be like, we need to do something about this. Sort of.
And I think it sort of talks about the fall of the Soviet Union being like that point at which you can't imagine any social system other than capitalism existing. And I would like to point to places like Cuba that are, obviously not perfect, but like you can't have, it's a perfect example of you can't have socialism in one country because, well, my favourite like rebuttal to the idea that socialism just doesn't work on its own is like, well, if it fails on its own all the time, why does like the most powerful empire on the planet stop at nothing to crush any attempt at socialism?
Yeah.
So I mean, but yeah, I think we're veering a little bit into like
other like just
to
general
territory.
just like general politicsy chat.
But yeah, no, I do think it's actually to end on a positive note because I'm noticing we've got 5 minutes left.
That went really quick.
Yeah, it did go quick. So you mentioned you can't see a world beyond.
I say I struggle with it. I do believe it can happen. I do. I can't. I'm not really. I couldn't actually like picture what it looks like, but I know it can happen.
Yeah.
Just because I know that capitalism, like you said, it just has this power, and I can defeat it.
Yeah. I mean,
I know there's something else. I know there's something better.
yeah.
I just believe it. I believe it in my heart that there's something else.
I see the like biggest creative influx for ordinary people as like just this, like, not a soul motivator, but like, you know, just such a huge motivator for that, you know, potential of a different economic system. You know, the idea that there's not a barrier to entry for music, for art, is like, you know, how much would be created that would just be, you know, so unexpectedly like beautiful and different without the, you know, the barrier of having to, guarantee, you know, like justify your survival, I guess.
So you're essentially saying if we didn't have to like worry about paying the rent and like working a job all the time and like burning ourselves out constantly because of the system that like exploits us so much, imagine like how much time we would have to fulfill our creative endeavors.
Exactly. And like people, so there was another piece of journalism recently that that we didn't really have time to mention, but I feel like, you know, people would have come across it. It was a Resident Advisor article, which obviously Resident Advisor has its own like problems, but it was, I think, let me see what it was called, just if people want to find it.
But if you, whilst you were looking for it, what was it about, or which one?
Well,
was
it was more or less exactly the same topic as Closing Announcement, but
Okay.
more from like a DJ perspective.
Okay, cool.
So, is electronic music becoming inaccessible to the working class? I think I sent it to you.
Yeah.
It went round. You know, it was doing the rounds a little bit before, and yeah. So this article, it basically explains the same thing of like the ability for the rich to create is like homogenizing a sound, right?
Yeah.
And creating like a sound that's sort of inexciting. It's not experimenting as much. You know, it's not creating much that's new. And so, you know, with what I was saying about you know, what could happen if when people, you know, like you were saying, don't need to like
Rely on a job or like pay the bills.
yeah,
and
you know, the potentials of the scene that we're in to create
Flourish.
something so like beyond, you know,
beyond
Well,
what we could even imagine now. Like if we think the scene's incredible now, and I love the scene, and I think it's incredible now, it's just to think about what it could be if we had more time and more energy and more resources to sort of put into it, like what it could be.
And there's things we can do, like, you know, social ownership. Somewhere like this is, as I always praise it to be, like you know.
We promise it's not a dictatorship.
Yeah.
I'm taking it back.
Everyone's really nice.
Everyone's really nice.
But
No,
yeah,
love it.
we have 1 minute left.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to wrap it up for today.
But thank you guys for listening to us chat for a little bit. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, apologies if it wasn't as direct as you might want, but you know, we really are just kind of.
We were figuring it out.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get better at it. If you've got any suggestions or any things you picked up on, again, tell us about it.
Yeah, please.
Message us or whatever. Any
and
means
let
of
us know
contacting.
if you've like
got any topics you might want to talk about.
Yeah.
I know I'm really, really, really keen to talk about artist management.
Yes.
Yes. I rang Chaz the other day and I was like, "Do you think management is a good-hearted endeavour?" So I want.
That'll be the title of the next one.
I really want to talk about that. But yeah, if there's anything else, let us know. And thank you again.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.